I want to play for you J.D. Vance, cut number 6. This is an astounding speech he gave that sent shockwaves all over the European Union because they had their feelings hurt. Their feelings were hurt. Oh, J.D. was mean to us. And he stood up and he talked about the need for free speech and free expression all over the world, including Germany. And this big dummy, Margaret Brennan, over the weekend said out loud, the Holocaust was simply free speech weaponized. She was talking to Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio said, what? Free speech weaponized? What in the world? So, but let me play for you the J.D. Vance portion of his speech ripping European leaders for their lack of free speech and expression. This is so important to all of us who relish what we get to do here. You know, for decades, I've gotten to work in a profession that celebrates free speech. So I want you to hear what J.D. Vance said, and then I want to bring you to 60 Minutes over the weekend. Yesterday was President's Day. Kudos to Joey Hudson for filling in for me as I went out of state to a funeral now in our nation's capital for our White House visit tomorrow. But here's what J.D. Vance, the vice president, said that had all the European leaders up in arms.
And unfortunately, when I look at Europe today, it's sometimes not so clear what happened to some of the Cold War's winners. I look to Brussels, where EU commissars warn citizens that they intend to shut down social media during times of civil unrest the moment they spot what they've judged to be, quote, hateful content. Or to this very country, where police have carried out raids against citizens suspected of posting anti-feminist comments online as part of, quote, combating misogyny on the internet, a day of action. I look to Sweden, where 2 weeks ago the government convicted a Christian activist for participating in Koran burnings that resulted in his friend's murder. And as the judge in his case chillingly noted, Sweden's laws to supposedly protect free expression do not, in fact, grant, and I'm quoting, a free pass to do or say anything without risking offending the group that holds that belief. And perhaps most concerningly, I look to our very dear friends, the United Kingdom, where the backslide away from conscience rights has placed the basic liberties of religious Britons in particular in the crosshairs. A little over 2 years ago, the British government charged Adam Smith Connor, a 51-year-old physiotherapist and an Army veteran, with the heinous crime of standing 50 meters from an abortion clinic and silently praying for 3 minutes. Not obstructing anyone, not interacting with anyone, just silently praying on his own. And after British law enforcement spotted him and demanded to know what he was praying for, Adam replied simply, it was on behalf of the unborn son he and his former girlfriend had aborted years before. Now, the officers were not moved. Adam was found guilty of breaking the government's new buffer zones law, which criminalizes silent prayer and other actions that could influence a person's decision within 200 meters of an abortion facility. He was sentenced to pay thousands of pounds in legal costs to the prosecution. Now, I wish I could say that this was a fluke, a one-off crazy example of a badly written law being enacted against a single person. But no, this last October, just a few months ago, the Scottish government began distributing letters to citizens whose houses lay within so-called safe access zones, warning them that even private prayer within their own homes may amount to breaking the law. Naturally, the government urged readers to report any fellow citizens suspected guilty of thought crime. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat.
Now, this speech, what you just heard, led the outgoing chairman of the Munich Security Conference to break down in tears. Christoph Hugsen said after the speech of Vice President Vance, we have to fear that our common value base is not that common anymore. And the guy started weeping. as if anything that J.D. Vance said could lead a leader to break down in tears. Well, let's look at reality. According to 60 Minutes, if 60 Minutes reported that you could go to prison for a meme you post. If you've ever dared to comment on a social media post, you might have to wonder if you could have been next had Kamala Harris won. CBS News and 60 Minutes went with the German police as they raided an apartment in northwest Germany. Six armed officers searched a suspect's home, seized his laptop and his cell phone. The crime? He posted a meme online. Now, Tracy just reminded me, that's happened here in America. I think the guy's name is Douglas Murray. Remember the guy that got arrested for stuff he posted about the election and Hillary Clinton? That guy went to prison. That guy got locked up. We've done that here. Douglas Mackey, who was imprisoned for making conservative, or as they put it at the time, right-wing memes. And I want you to hear 60 Minutes praising the Germans for arresting people for their unpopular opinions, either online or on person. This is from 60 Minutes. You know we were one election away from that happening here, right? Do you get it? Do you understand that J.D. Vance was absolutely 100% correct? Do you understand you just heard one of America's most prominent news magazine TV shows praising, essentially, praising armed police in Germany breaking into apartments and homes and confiscating laptops and cell phones because people were posting racist memes? The very first question in that clip we played ought to bring you to your knees. In fact, Christian, can you just play the first part of the CBS correspondent's question to these smug, sanctimonious, pompous jerks from Germany bragging over arresting people for saying things that are insulting or unpopular or inappropriate? Again, first question.
Is it a crime to insult somebody in public?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
And it's a
Yes, it is. Yes, it's a crime to insult somebody in public in Germany. And CBS is suggesting that would be good here. CBS is suggesting that's the way it ought to be in the United States. Oh, are we not like Germany? If we could only be like the Germans. And J.D. Vance went over there and said, this is a bad idea. And that led the outgoing chair of the Munich Security Conference to break down in tears over that meanie J.D. Vance. Do you realize how lucky we are? Do you recognize how blessed we are? How we dodged the unimaginable by putting Donald Trump back in office? My gosh, 800, this is so important. 800-655-MIKE. 800-655-6453. Incidentally, that guy's name is Douglas Mackey. My apologies. Douglas Mackey was the guy who wound up going to prison for posting memes. The Democrats want us to be like the fascistic Germans who are arresting people for posting memes. And if you're not worried about that, you're not paying attention, and if you're not relieved that we avoided what could have been our reality, you're not paying attention. 800-655-MIKE. I hope you join us. Here's that exchange I promised between Margaret Brennan, host of CBS's Face the Nation, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Consider how bright this guy is, that he had the wherewithal to push back in real time against the preposterous suggestion that the Holocaust was a product of the weaponization of free speech.
Well, he was standing in a country where free speech was weaponized to conduct a genocide. and he met with the head of a political party that has far-right views and some historic ties to extreme groups. The context of that was changing the tone of it. And you know that the censorship
I have to disagree with
was
you.
specifically about the right.
No, I have to disagree with you. Free speech was not used to conduct a genocide. The genocide was conducted by an authoritarian Nazi regime that happened to also be genocidal because they hated Jews and they hated minorities and they hated those that they had a list of people they hated, but primarily the Jews. There was no free speech in Nazi Germany. There was none. There was also no opposition in Nazi Germany. They were a sole and only party that governed that country. So that's not an accurate reflection of history.
An amazingly astute response to one of the stupidest questions or stupidest assertions I've ever seen on national television in my life. But think about it. It's very devious for the left to do this, for an arm of the left like CBS and Margaret Brennan to try to connect those dots and say, look at the Holocaust. They weaponized free speech. This is a pathetic and desperate effort to punish people who have speech that the left disagrees with. And they've done it before. Remember Nina Jankowicz? Remember the Biden administration's Nina Jankowicz? She was this is what we could have had if we hadn't gotten this election right on November 5th. Nina Jankowicz was the minister, the director of the Ministry of Truth. It was a Department of Homeland Security based disinformation governance board. The Democrats want us to be like Germany. John's in Arkansas, 17 before the hour. Hi, John. Welcome back. How are you?
Hi, Mike. You know
Hey.
what? It's been going on a lot longer than we even can think about. But my point that I wanted to bring up was, remember when President Trump was speaking out against not knowing E.G. Carroll? And it cost him $80 million because
Correct.
he was saying something that if somebody's accusing you of something,
Right.
and also in his New York case, remember when they made him where he couldn't talk about his case at
The gag
all?
order.
He was
The
getting
gag order. Yeah, you're right. Well, look, that's what happened with E. Jean Carroll. He denied her charge, and they sued him, or she sued, and a New York jury awarded her gazillions of dollars, which will be tied up forever on appeal. It's ridiculous, but you're right, John. Good point. They can punish people for speech in a variety of ways, not just criminally, but civilly. Larry is in Martyville, Indiana. Hi, Larry. Welcome aboard.
Well, thanks for taking my call, Mike.
You bet.
I want to say that you can offend me, I can offend you. The one thing that we have in America as veterans, I will defend your right to offend me.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. Well, I mean, the chilling exchange. Play the beginning, if you can, Christian, of CBS's 60 Minutes. This exchange was so remarkable, where these are German officials. These are free speech experts, or speech expert, not free speech. There's nothing free about what they do in Germany. These are speech experts. These are prosecutors, professors. This is a group of people that was being interviewed on 60 Minutes. And the very first question made my blood run cold. It ought to make your blood run cold too.
Is it a crime to insult somebody in public?
Yes, it is.
And it's
Now, all of them right there, all three of them immediately reply in the affirmative. So as many of you have been saying, who gets to determine what's an insult? If I say that's the craziest thing, a caller calls my show and that's the craziest thing I've ever heard, you're a moron. Well, I've just insulted you, right? Or you call me, Mike, that's crazy. Your position. We get to go around arresting people. Remember Nina Jankowicz? We were so close to this happening all over again if Vice President Cackles had won. Thank God Trump won. Thank God Trump won. Thank God Trump won. Do you remember Nina Jankowicz? Remember this character? This was the woman who was supposedly the head of the Ministry of Truth Department. I remember when this first came out, and I was watching this unfold. I thought, how are we standing for this? But this is what Biden and the dirty Democrats tried to do to us. Remember her? Nina Jankowicz was the head of this goofy effort to curb misinformation by the Biden administration. Now, you talk about Orwellian. And this was a real thing. Do you remember this character? This is who she was, Nina Jankowicz. Remember this?
Them in Congress or a mainstream outlet, so disinformation's origins are slightly less atrocious. It's how you hide a little lie. It's how you hide a little lie. It's how you hide a little lie. When Rudy Giuliani shared bad intel from Ukraine, or when TikTok influencers say COVID can cause pain, they're laundering disinfo when we really should take note and not support their lies with our wallet, voice, or vote. Oh, information laundering is really quite ferocious. It's when a huckster takes some lies and makes them sound precocious by saying them in Congress or a mainstream outlet. So disinformation's origin seems slightly less atrocious. Woo.
Now, that was the Biden administration's Nina Jankowicz. She was representing the Department of Homeland Security's Disinformation Governance Board. And look, I love me some Mary Poppins. I admit it. When I was a kid, I had a thing for Mary Poppins. And maybe that's why I am the way I am today. Maybe that's why I'm messed up. But you couldn't have picked a more prominent example of the government's and the Democrats' attempt to censor speech than that awful chapter in American history. We say it every day. Thank God Trump won. Thank God Trump won. Thank God Trump won.
For full shows, live and on demand, it's Salem News Channel.